mess that one up. Leo,
Hello.
hi, nice to see you.
Hello. Hi.
Okay, so we're here to talk about fees and charging. It's part two, and I have a presentation to share. Obviously, I'm recording this and there'll be a link to it. So I know the slides are quite dense, and I know I'm going to be flicking through them at pace, but you'll be able to see the recording. So hopefully that will help with anything that you can't quite see at the moment. So let me just share. Okay. Pausing. Right. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just, okay, cool. Thank you. So, talking about structuring proposals that win clients today. So today we're going to be talking specifically about calculating your fee proposal. Um, Now, first of all, I just wanted to do some announcements because everything I do, I've got a Facebook group called Hot House. I think most of you know about it, but everything I do, I put links in Hot House because I've got quite a lot of platforms that I'm active on, and it sort of can be hard for me even to keep tabs. So if you are looking for a link to anything or any information, and also I've got a newsletter which is Hot House related that I send out once a week on a Sunday morning. And again, it's got links to everything that I have done that week, and it's also got links to things that are coming up. So if you aren't on the distribution list and you would like to be, then just drop me a line and I will make sure that you get onto the distribution list for that newsletter. So this is the second webinar in a series of two. And the first webinar was last week. There is a link to that where you can watch that webinar again on my YouTube channel. And my channel is at Julia Begbie, which is on the slide on the left-hand side. In that first webinar, we looked at the different ways that you could charge, and I revealed myself as being quite committed to calculating based on an hourly rate. So, yeah, so that's the position that we're going to be taking in the webinar today. But obviously, in the first webinar, I talk through the various different ways that you could calculate your fee. So there are other ways of doing it. Today and we also looked at how to calculate your hourly rate, and I spoke to you about a new idea that I really like the idea of, which is Veblen services, and I'll talk about those a little bit more again today. And I also spoke about value-based charging. Now, I've written blog posts on both of those topics, both on Veblen and on value-based charging, and they're both on my website. So I've put a link or an address there also on the slide for recipeforaroom.com/blog. And that's where you could find those blog posts if you'd like to read more about those two subjects. So that was the content of webinar one of this pair. And now we are into the second part, which is starting with a recap of the first one, which we've had. Then I'm going to talk about, for the purposes of creating your fee proposal, the information that you need to gather from your clients. We're going to look at actually calculating your fees. Now, that's going to be based on the hourly rate method, although I know we have people here today who use other ways of calculating their fees. And I'm going to talk to you too about presenting your fee proposal because things have shifted around that in the last few years. And I wanted to certainly update the materials that I have to represent or slightly changed ways of working. So we'll look at presenting your proposal. And then I wanted to finish up with some lessons that I've learned the hard way through my career and just share some of those with you before we go on to Q&A. So back to the welcome and introduction. I know most of you know me. Um, I have a 28-year background in interior design practice and teaching. So I was a director of the KLC School of Design. So I've I've been teaching and practicing interior design for a long time, but I'm even older than that because prior to that, I had a 10-year career working in the city. And it's just recently that I've come to think around my stockbroking career and how relevant that has been to my interior design practice in terms of understanding some of the high net worth clients that I had then ultimately ended up working with as an interior designer. So it feels like, in some respects, all of it knits together. So that's been quite interesting to reflect on recently. And I do want to do more on working with high net worth individuals. And that's something I'm going to be thinking about and producing more materials on. So that is me. And now we are going to talk about gathering information on your clients. So I want to get you into the best possible position, setting yourself up to deliver the right fee proposal. So the stages that we're going to think about today are the discovery call. I'm going to come back to the naming of that, the preliminary meeting, the production of the fee proposal, and the presentation of the fee proposal. So these are the component parts of getting a proposal, a business proposal to your client, which hopefully they accept, and then you go on to work with them as an interior designer. So I'm going to start by talking about the discovery call. Now, this isn't something that historically has been, was anything that we spoke about, particularly when we were teaching this at KLC. But I do think that increasingly, this first point of contact needs to be formalized. And it seems to me that the more the world becomes digital and the more things that get automated, the more value there is in personal connection. And I've been reading up research on the power of personal connection. And I've just put some bullet points on the left-hand slide from the Harvard Business Review, from Salesforce, from Bain and Co., and from McKinsey, all of which says that you have got a much higher chance, a double or triple chance of actually making a sale if if that begins with personal communication, with personal contact. So if you can organize your way of working, your operation, so that you respond very quickly to any interest that comes in from prospective clients, and that you respond in a way that gets you on the phone with them or gets you into a Zoom with them or actually gets you to meet them, you are going to have a much better chance of securing that piece of business, particularly compared to competition who don't take the same approach. So I've been on the receiving end of these discovery calls as a prospective client for different services, obviously not as interior designer. And I know that I feel much more, it's almost like an obligation to engage with the person, to take them seriously and not be rude to them and not ghost them if they've actually taken time out of their day to speak to me. So I think this 15-minute, it's like an on-ramp to your business. It's like instead of asking people to step up to your business, you've put down a ramp and now they can just roll in. So it's a triage meeting because you know your services, you know what you can provide. You're assessing the fit of this stranger to your business. You're personalizing the connection with them. You're thinking in your head, mapping that client to your existing services, or maybe even the conversation with them is inspiring a new service that you could offer or a variation on your services. You're getting a sense of that client. You've got the opportunity to promote your business. And you can, from this, you can you can take the step to the next level, which would be to arrange a time for a preliminary meeting. Now, this is not how I ran my business. I'm suggesting, that we've moved on and this is a different way of doing it. I wouldn't charge for this meeting. This is literally just a getting to know you meeting, and it's very limited in time, and it's not about giving interior design advice. It's just about establishing that first meeting with the client. I don't like the name discovery call. I think if Nicole Kidman's PA gets in touch with me about my interior design services, I don't put them on a discovery call. That doesn't sound exclusive. It doesn't sound luxury. Maybe it's an initial consultation or an introductory conversation or a private consultation or whatever you want to call it. But the point is, it's this triage. It is a discovery call. So personal contact, I believe, is something that is going to become more and more important, more relevant. And it's partly because I do think AI interior designers are going to be nibbling at our heels and elevating our businesses, pushing them up the value chain, increasing the luxury, and increasing the sense of human personal interaction is going to be a bonus. It's going to be an asset to your business. So I do think this personal contact is really important. So you have your services, you know what they are, you've got them established, you get this first point of contact, and you decide where you're going to put this little pigeon that has flown into your business. So assuming, obviously, if what the client wants is an hour's consultancy, you're not going to have a preliminary meeting and then produce a fee proposal. A fee proposal is something you produce for a really significant piece of work. So we're now thinking, okay, this prospective client is going to go for my mid-range service or my top-range service. I am going to take the trouble to have a preliminary meeting, after which point I'm going to be producing the fee proposal. So we have a client who is showing early interest. We want to convert them to a formal working relationship. And the fee proposal is going to be the bridge that is going to get them from their early interest and convert them into that formal working relationship. So during this preliminary meeting, we want to gather enough information to produce a fee proposal for them that is perfectly pitched, that feels custom, feels bespoke, feels like it was obviously tailored just for them. So during our preliminary meeting, we are going to speak to them about their property, the architecture, the age, the condition, the location, whether there are existing floor plans, all that kind of thing, the scope of the project, exactly what interventions they want in this building, what it is they're hoping to achieve, the investment that they're prepared to make financially into this transformation, and investment rather than budget, because what they're doing is they're building their wealth. They're increasing their wealth by making this change to their asset. They are increasing the value of their asset. The timeline over which they expect, whether it's realistic or not, that they expect to make this transformation, their past experience of working with designers or with architects or with builders or not, because obviously if they're completely fresh and new to all of this, they're going to need even more clarity and induction into your services. The team, so architects, builders, who else is going to be involved in the project, and the stakeholders. So you might be speaking to one partner in a partnership. There might be adult children, almost adult children or younger children. There might be, other relatives. So who needs to be involved in this conversation and ideally get as much information and background on these people as you possibly can. And then you get into the lovely thing that is exciting everybody, which of course is the vision that your clients have or hope, the inspiration they're looking for in order to transform their property, and your value and expertise, because you're also selling gently in this meeting in terms of what you're capable of. Now, I have always charged, actually, that's not true. I have usually charged for preliminary meetings. So, and I will give my all to this. I'm not holding anything back because I've got plenty more in the tank. You know, they're not going to exhaust all my good ideas in an hour or two on site. And I want to demonstrate the value of having me on board as part of the team. I said I don't always charge, and the exceptions would be if, for example, there was an architect who I regularly worked with, and I knew that they had already signed a really good client and they wanted to bring me on board and they asked me to come and meet that client. It's a warm introduction to a client who I know is viable, is a decent client. So perhaps in that situation, I would have a pro bono type of a meeting, but otherwise, I am charging. Now, next steps from this meeting, when you leave this meeting, there is a next step. I'll talk to you about that in a moment. So then we get into actually calculating your fees. Now, last week in the other webinar, we spoke about whether you charge by the hour. Not so, probably not so typical for a large project, whether you charge a fixed fee, how you calculate, whether you calculate by the hour, whether you're calculating as a percentage of the value of the contract. There are these different ways of calculating your fees. I am going to talk to you about calculating based on an hourly rate. Now, when I start a fee proposal, when I was teaching at KLC, we used to obviously put our students through like a whole term where they were producing a single project. And it was an enormous amount of work. And we would say to them, you have to produce 3 elevations and 2 sets of floor plans and rendered this and 3D visuals and all this stuff. However, the point is that when you get to presentation to the client, you're not necessarily showing all of that stuff. So we made our students produce that stuff because they were learning and it was necessary that they learned how to do it. But actually, what's much more efficient is to decide in advance what you're going to show at that final presentation, what your boards and samples and all that kind of stuff is going to comprise. Make a list and then reverse engineer from that the work you have to do in order to be able to create that presentation. So that is your starting point. So I have got a horrible spreadsheet, which I will share in Hothouse. So I'll put this as a linked file. So if you go into Hothouse, you go to files. I haven't put it there yet, but I will put it there today. This Excel spreadsheet. I think I might have it in numbers as well. I'm not sure. But anyway, I'll put it up in Hothouse. And basically, what I have in the left-hand column are the stages of the steps of the design process. So when I think, what do I need to do to produce this presentation? This is the list of things that I need to do. So I need to take the brief, analyze the brief, produce a concept, survey the space if plans don't exist, draw it up to scale, do spatial planning, sourcing, etc., etc. So these are the tasks I'm going to have to do in order to be able to fully resolve my client's design challenge. Against that, because I'm doing my calculation by the hour, or indeed by the day, I'm going to allocate an amount of time for the completion of each of those steps. So based on my past experience, I put in a block of time to complete those tasks. And against that, I put my hourly rate or my day rate. Now, I've popped in £75 an hour. I think that's about the lowest hourly rate I see these days. So, as you work up, your rates are obviously going to get higher than that, but I've put that in just as a starting point. And you can see that we build up our fee proposal in this way. So this is page 2 of the same proposal. We're continuing on down with the tasks that need to be completed to produce the presentation. And at the bottom, like the penultimate 4 lines, we've got meetings. So 12 hours for meetings. When you see the fee proposal, that's 6 client meetings, each 2 hours long, 18 phone calls for the duration of the project, a period of time for revisions, and then the totals. So I've got the actual totals that comes to. Now, if anybody gets a calculator out and tries to tot up all of this, you'll see it doesn't add up, because I think it came out at like 20,490, and I knocked it down. I knocked it down to 19,950. And that is because of left digit bias. The eyes go to the left of the number. And if that starts with a 2 rather than a 1, it's more shocking for the client. So I've locked off 500 quid, and I have made it, I've gone with left digit bias, and I've made it more acceptable. Just below that, I spoke to you last week about retention, getting onto retention or on a retainer, which is such a lovely way to work. So, and I'll explain this a little bit more in a moment, but the estimated duration of this project is 4 months. The fee is just under £20,000 based on £75 an hour. I divide the fee by the estimated duration of 4 months, and that comes out at roughly 5,000. So if you're going onto a retainer, and I'll show you the paperwork around that, then you're going to be talking about a monthly retainer of £5,000 for an estimated duration of 4 months, payment in advance. So that's how we do the calculation, and I will put this document into Hothouse. Alongside that, this is a very important document. This is a Gantt chart, and this is how you calculate the period of time that you think it's going to take you to complete this project. So month 1, month 2, month 3, month 4, I've put in the number of hours or the number of days that I anticipated each of those tasks was going to take. I've allowed time for client meetings. I've also popped in that we're going to have phone calls. And I have calculated that if I was to run most of this, assuming I've got other work going on alongside and I have to run my business, this is how this scale of project would pan out if it ran successfully over a period of time. So I know that I can probably, with a good client, I can probably complete this project within this time frame. Now, this document, I think I'm going to refer to it again later, but I'll just say it now while we're looking at it. I keep a beady eye on this document. And the minute that the actual timeline diverges from this projected timeline, screech of the brakes and a major steward's inquiry. What is going on? Why have things slowed down? Whose fault is it? Whose fault is it? What can we do to fix it? Is it a fundamental problem that bodes ill for the balance of the project, in which case, if there are tricky conversations to have, it's much better to have them in week 3 than to have them in week 15. So we can begin to see if we're running into trouble very early on, if we've got our time properly estimated to overview our project. Now, all of this stuff I'm showing you, this is internal documentation. This is not stuff that I show to my client. It's for me. I don't want my client to start salami slicing and suggesting that why do I need 3 hours? Wouldn't 2 hours be enough for things that I know what's involved and I need that time to do a good job? However, over on the right-hand side is another document that I'm going to show you, which is the scope of the project or the schedule of services. And the tasks which I identified and listed down the left-hand side of my calculation get imported into the schedule of services. So they are what I tell the client I'm going to do for them. So I'm going to take a brief, I'm going to analyze the brief, I'm going to produce a concept, and all of that stuff is beginning to inform the client of the process that they're going to be going through if they engage my business. And you'll see at the top there, the little bullet points, the short bullet points, specifically identify the parts of the house that we're dealing with. So that if any other part of the house gets floated as something to be thought about, we know it's outside of this fee proposal. We know that we need to revise the fee proposal if it needs to be brought in to the project. Similarly, my Gantt chart is going to inform the target timing of the project. So I can indicate to the client that, with a following wind, if everything goes to plan, we estimate that we can get this work done within 4 months. That is the likely time it's going to take. I don't guarantee that, I don't commit to it, but I give it as an indicative period of time. And then, of course, the actual nub of it gets imported into my fee proposal as the amount of money that needs to be paid over whatever period of time you decide is going to be the way that you work your fee proposal. And so this document is going to inform the client-facing documents, but isn't going to get presented to the clients. Now, I've got this new idea, which comes from hard lessons learned the hard way, which is this concept of the client multiplier. And basically, what I mean by that is some clients are brilliant, absolutely fantastic, really efficient. You speak to them, you get the job. When you speak to them, it's really quick. They're quick with their decisions. They're effective professional people. Other clients, I've had clients where I've been on the phone to them for half an hour before we even begin to talk about the project. There's an amount of chatter that has to be gone through first. I think I would now be applying a client multiplier to those situations. So a good client, the multiplier is 1. I just, multiply by 1, it comes out exactly the same. But a client who's a little bit more challenging, I might make them a 1.2 or a 1.5, and I might build that into my fee proposal. And it's only at the parts of the fee proposal that client touches. So taking the brief, they're involved in taking the brief. So maybe I look at the hours that I've been thinking about, standard hours, and I just apply a little bit extra for that client. Or maybe when I'm sourcing, if I'm going shopping with them or they're going to be involved in that, I might put a bit of a multiplier in there. For the length of meetings, I might allow a more generous volume or quantity of meetings. And for the duration of the project, maybe it's going to take us longer to get there because I want them to get back to me by the end of the week, and then it rolls over to the next week, and then we find ourselves sort of the end of the project getting pushed further away. So, it's just a perspective to bring to your overall calculation. I spoke to you last week about turning yourself into a premium brand, turning yourself into a luxury brand, making your services must-have services where people won't accept anybody else. They have to have you, and you're able to push up your prices as a result. So this focus on pushing up the value chain, something I'm going to be dealing with my new bootcamp and also with my bootcamp graduates. We're going to be working on all of this. But the idea is, yes, maybe you've got a low rate now, but we're going to be working to push it up. We need to get our feet up and out and clear of the bottom end of interior design for any new models that might come in or any new competition that's going to come in and make that bottom end of design a little bit more challenging. Okay, preparing your fee proposal. So the package itself traditionally has a cover letter, gives a guide to the design process so people can understand what they're embarking on. It has a schedule of your services and a schedule of your fees. It comes with a contract or terms and conditions. And now, we used to say, and put in a leaflet or put in a, brochure. Now, when these are produced, the whole thing is exquisite. So from page 1 to page 15, it's a glossy presentation infused with, I think I've got a list of things that we might have in there. No, sorry, I know I'm going to come back to it. But it's got things like testimonials, it's got beautiful images of your work, it's aspirational. And all of this, you can get templates for these kinds of things. All of this is bundled beautifully within your fee proposal package. So your cover letter, which of course you can get AI to help you with if you're that way inclined, is going to thank the client for the opportunity. It's going to give evidence that you've listened and understood their brief. It's going to convey your deep interest in their project. It's going to explain to them the optimal services for their project and why they suit their project. It's going to give an overview of what follows in the package, and it's going to signpost next steps. I also say it should have an assumptive conclusion, and I mean that for this whole episode, to assume that this is going to be successful. So you write this in a confident air that just assumes that we are going forward. It doesn't question whether we're going forward, it assumes we're going forward. And hopefully that way we can slip it through and it'll get signed off, and the whole thing just runs like clockwork. We then have the next part, which is the guide to your process. It explains what the interior design process is and how it works. Some people might call it something like how to work with us or how we work, or, something nice like that. It manages expectations. So, it helps the client to understand how long things take and what their role is. It demonstrates your value. It encourages confidence in you. It confirms your professionalism. It doesn't make unrealistic commitments. And it sets them up ready for their own bespoke schedule of services, which is the next thing, or the scope of the project. So this is what you are going to do for them, how you are going to serve them. It identifies specifically everything you're going to do and every room you're going to do it in, which means that it gets very difficult for the brief to expand without being able to recognize that the brief has expanded and deal with that by increasing the fee or adding an extra bit onto the project. It demonstrates the scale of the undertaking. You're not going to just walk into a room and instantly see it and diagnose it and specify it. There's work involved underneath. It separates the fluffy stereotype of the interior designer from expert professional status. It quantifies the deliverables because there is a contract on this, and you need to deliver the things that you say you're going to deliver within the contract. And at this point, your client probably realizes that, there's going to be a reasonable fee attached to this volume of work. Then we have the schedule of fees, clear presentation of the total outlay, the staging of the payments, what is and isn't included in the fee, your hourly rate, in case we need to add anything on that basis, the number of meetings that are included and their duration. Because if the client needs more, then more can be added, but they would be additional. It broaches but doesn't commit to target timing, and to some extent it lays down the opportunity for an extension of the contract or the project in the event that, not due to your fault, things run late and more time is required. So that's all part and parcel of the schedule of fees. Then we get into the contract itself, and I've shown a picture of the BIID contract, which is obviously based on the Royal Institute of British Architects as well. However, you could also have your own terms and conditions, which you could get help with from a lawyer. So this protects you and your clients. It it makes sure that you know your duties and obligations. They're all actually laid out very clearly within this BIID contract. It ties everything down tightly, it establishes professional boundaries, and it helps you choose, you need to choose which of these associated documents is going to go as part of this fee proposal. Now, I mention HCR Legal here. I don't have an affiliation with them, but I know that they do work with the BIID and they helped with the drafting of the contract. So if you need bespoke work, then this is probably a good place to start. And of course, as I said, historically, we might throw in some kind of brochure or something, but now actually this whole presentation is beautifully produced in the first instance. So the whole package is a bespoke brochure that takes you through these different documents, but integrates into all of this things like client testimonials, team biographies, your professional memberships, your code of conduct or your mission statement, your design sensibilities. What are you famous for? You know, what's your style? What do your finished projects look like? And helps to illustrate the value of professional interior design services. So the the detail, the eye for detail that you bring to the presentation of this just speaks to what you are going to bring to your client's project in the event that they choose to hire you. And finally, it also includes a first invoice, which is a next step, because you want to be paid in advance in order to start the design part of this project. And so the ball is now with the client. The client has your invoice and you can follow up with them in a week or two's time or whatever to see how this has landed and, you know, are they proposing to go ahead? But they have the invoice in the event that they're ready to go ahead straight away. So it's a clear next step. It includes your payment information, it's payable in advance, and it signals your confidence and your professionalism. Now, historically, what we would do is we'd sit up till 4 o'clock in the morning writing all of this stuff. And then, you know, maybe you'd read it again the next day or whatever, but then you hit send and it goes off to the client, and that's that. I don't think that that is the way that we should be doing this kind of thing these days. So I'm just checking what. So we had the preliminary meeting and we took all of the information and we said to the client, right, I'm going to toddle off now. I'm going to come up with a bespoke package of services that will deliver the transformation that you want for this property. The next step is to book in a meeting for me to present the fee proposal. So you are not going to get sight of this fee proposal. I'm going to talk you through it. I will be there with you, either online or physically in your presence, and we will look at my fee proposal together. Okay, so personal contact, so important. At the high end, you know, with high net worth individuals, at the high end of interior design, how your proposal is presented is as important as what is presented. So the how is very important. And sticker shock is, you know, that if you fire this off anonymously and it lands in their inbox, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to start at the back and look for the price. And if they haven't had the build up, if they haven't had the, you know, the how and the why, that could be quite a shocking first impact. They might not then go back and read the whole thing that you've put all of this work into, which is why we present it. Okay, so the presentation of the fee proposal, we re-establish our rapport, our warmth. We remind the client why they reached out. We acknowledge their goals and we express genuine enthusiasm for their project. We take control. We have an agenda. We explain what today's meeting is for. We're going to walk them through a personally tailored proposal and ensure that they fully understand what's included before they make their decisions about carrying to go forward. We share our process, we explain it clearly, we walk them through the stages of the service, the briefing, the concept, the sourcing, and so on, so that they understand how you will work and what they'll receive at each step. We explain the specific services or the schedule of services recommended to match their needs. We highlight any optional extras or potential upgrades, and we show how this scope solves their particular problems. We frame the fee, so we get them ready because they understand the scale and complexity of the project. They understand the level of personal involvement that's required. And really importantly, we are selling transformation. We're selling a transformation that they aren't capable of achieving without professional assistance. And we set their expectations and we show them how perhaps what we do compares within our industry, if that's a helpful thing to do. And then we reveal the fee. So we share the total investment in their property and we do it calmly and confidently. Okay, this is where I now need a Barack Obama length pause. We let it land. We don't jump in and talk, nervously in the space. And then we explain what's included and we break it down if necessary to make the value feel tangible. And we hold space for their reaction. It's now their turn. We've done our presentation. It's over to them. Now, while you are revealing the fee, you can be watching, for their reaction, because you do get, if it is a shock, you get, is it a shock or do they appear not to flinch? You can start taking some tells from them. Listen attentively, address their concerns, and if needed, you could start to explore ways to tailor the scope without immediately lowering the fee or without, having to eat into your hourly rate. And then we clarify the next steps. They've got the invoice. We summarize the path forward, what happens next. We can offer to give them time to reflect, but it's always a good idea to give a decision point, to avoid some kind of indefinite limbo. And this might include information for them on your availability to start the project, what they need to do to secure your services. Okay, so I am going to come back for questions in a moment. I just want to make sure I don't hold you up too long. So I've just got some very quick tips. I'm sure many of you have learned these as well. But first of all, actually, I'm going to go to the next tip first. Break the fee into different project stages. So we have a fee for design, we have a fee for implementation, and a fee for supply. So we're breaking it down. And in the previous webinar, we looked at these different stages of pre-design, design, construction, snagging and handover. And we discussed the ways of charging that were appropriate for those different stages. So we want to get paid for the first bit, paid for the second bit, paid for the third bit, make sure that before we go into construction, we're fully paid up on design. I'm going to go back to my first piece of advice, which is it can be really helpful to have a break clause in your contract so that if you or the client at any point feel that this isn't working out, it is possible for you to give notice or for them to give notice so that you aren't coupled together indefinitely. And any fees they give you, I strongly recommend, if you possibly can, put them into your business bank account and don't touch those fees until the job has been, that tranche of the job has been completed satisfactorily. Don't ever get yourself where you're sort of hostage to fees with a client that you don't want to work with. Okay, so that's tip 1 and tip 2. Tip 3, treat friends in exactly the same way, or even more. Have working hours, only talk about their project with them during working hours, put them into a contract, tell them you're going to treat them like a real client, and keep your friendship. It's not a good idea perhaps to work with friends, but if you're going to do it, then treat them fully like clients. Um, Never discount your rate. Never say, well, my hourly rate is £75, but oh, if you insist, I'll knock it down by £5. Instead, reduce the amount of work that you do for the client. If their fee is too high, reduce the work and not the rate. I've got a friend who is a professional chef, and and the other day she was laughing and she told me that she put out a fee proposal for a client, and the client started nitpicking with her about how many aubergines she was going to put into a particular dish. Now, don't let your client start nitpicking with you about the number of aubergines. You are the professional. You are putting together the proposal, and it's not for the client to start suggesting how you go about your work. If you don't if you don't reveal to them how many aubergines are going in, then you're not going to get yourself into a position where they need to have that conversation. So, but very gently but firmly, don't get drawn into those conversations because they don't lead anywhere satisfactory. Use your Gantt chart to manage your client. So have a schedule, have a calendar for the project, and always keep an eye on it. And if reality and the project are diverging, get onto it instantly and have any difficult conversations. And actually, another tip, if there's ever a problem in the project, you talk to the client about it face to face. Then you follow up in writing. All of these difficult conversations are had face to face. Don't ever do anything for free. If you find yourself in a position where you think, hang on a minute, I think they're asking me to do this for free, you can revisit the fee proposal. You can tell them that that's what you're going to do. Now, of course, there are exceptions. If a client has spent £1 million with you and they say, I just need one more cushion, we're going to be reasonable about these kinds of things, but don't get drawn into doing favors for clients, and never say, I'll try or I'll look at it, because that's as good as saying, yes, I'll do it. So just be really careful. Have a little sixth sense about being asked to do things for free. And I think this might be the last one. You're allowed time to think. So if a client confronts you, if there's a difficult conversation to be had, if you find yourself in an uncomfortable situation, you can absolutely, it's not unprofessional, it's not a problem to say, do you know what? I think I need a little bit of time to mull this over. Leave it with me. I'll come back to you. So don't feel like you have to be pressured into any changes or decisions in the moment. You can always come back to your client. Oh, yes, final one. Be prepared to walk away. If it feels bad, if it's clearly not a fit, if you don't like the way it's unfolding, you don't have to take the job. You can always decide that perhaps you aren't a good fit for each other. You have different ideas about how the project's going to run, and perhaps they might be better to find another designer who is a better fit for them and for their hopes and values for the project. Oh, yeah, sorry. Don't be arrogant, but always assume success. So that's the presumptive close, the assumptive close, assuming that it's all going to be fine and we're all going ahead, and just make that the way that you present your business. Okay, now I know I've got some bootcamp graduates here, and I've also got some lovely fresh boot campers here, and we're all about to start next week. I do have a couple of spaces left if anybody wants to join me and work together on pushing their fees up and work together for the rest of the year on that, then let me know, send me a DM or whatever. But the opportunity to join is going to close next week. So this is the last time I'm going to trouble you with this advert. This year anyway. Okay, so that opens us up for Q&A. I'm going to put us all back and I'm going to stop sharing. And I hope I can answer your questions. Does anybody have anything they'd like to ask on this subject?
I do. Can you
Where's
hear me?
that? Where's that coming? Is that Leo?
Leo,
Leo. Hi,
yes.
Leo. Yes. Carry
Hiya.
on.
Just a quick one. With the
Yeah.
Gantt chart, where you've
Yes.
kind of locked in all the timings, do you share that with the client?
Well, there are clients and clients. It could be quite helpful, um, but remember that you have to live up to it too.
Yeah.
So, if you are super efficient and your time management is excellent and your client management is excellent, I think I would share it.
Yeah.
And then when things diverge, it's not like you're not blaming the client, that you've got this piece of paper and the piece of paper says, oh, we should be here and we're not. So then let's chat about why we're not here. So, yes, I think as long as you are prepared to be held to account on your performance, I would I would consider sharing that, yes.
Yes, I think that that was the other point I was going to make, and we can talk more about this tomorrow if we speak, but is that it's putting you under the cosh as well,
Yes.
potentially. And,
Yes.
as someone with kids and then school holidays, and I don't always quite know when I'm going to have to be a bit kind of fallow, there's a sort of obviously, you can be more profitable the quicker you do the job, but sometimes you might be like, oh shit, I actually can't really do anything for 10 days because I've got kids around my feet.
Yeah, in which or kids get sick or whatever, and then you have
Yeah.
to go to your client and say to them, I'm the one holding the project up. It's a bad look. So in that case, I wouldn't. But if you need to, you can go to your client and say, look, it's week 3 of the project. I did hope that by now we'd have made decisions on X, Y, and Z, and we haven't. And I think the reason is you don't feel confident with the choices that I've put to you, which is fine. We can take a bit longer. We can look at some different options, but be aware that this is pushing out. This is now pushing out the completion date of the project. And you need to be comfortable with that because there might be some additional fees that need to be
Yeah. I
discussed.
just think that if you want to maintain a happy relationship with a client, you need to be sure that if you're going to go to them asking for more money because the project's taken longer, that it's really, really clear that you have not caused a single day of delay.
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
otherwise, suddenly you're in this conflict that you might not even really need.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a client who, we showed her 10 sofas. In the end, we showed her 100 sofas. And it wasn't 100 random sofas. They were 100 sofas selected because each one of them met the brief and was perfect. And in the end, I've spoken about it before, but we renegotiated that contract 4 times. And each time it was because we picked it up early. We spoke to the client face to face. We said we do understand that you don't like this decision-making process, but it is delaying things, and we
I
are
guess
going
it's
to
a
have to talk.
security blanket against the dithering client. And it's about using a sort of a roadmap, a Gantt chart against which you can call them out in
Yeah,
a kind of professional way.
yeah, but perhaps without whipping the Gantt chart out at any point,
Yeah,
just have it
yeah,
as
yeah,
a
yeah,
sort
yeah.
of concept in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Any other questions? I know there are a few fee proposals brewing in this group, so don't know if anyone. No?
I was
Sure
just
there
going to
are.
say that I've just sent one off. Literally, I could have done with this, Julia, about 2 weeks ago, but never mind. So I did do it first time round, didn't I? Um, and I bought a template on Etsy that was excellent, and there are some really good ones out there. And in the end, with all the images, it was so big I had to send it over by WeTransfer, which was fine, and the client did open it up. But I did think a lot afterwards about how it would have been good to present it. And perhaps a Zoom or something like that would be good, or a video. Luckily, it was accepted and everything's fine. She seems like a really nice, easy client to deal with. But yeah, I can. It took me a long, long time to do that fee proposal, and none of that's paid for, is it? I know
No.
they get easier the more you do them, but every job seems that you have to tailor them slightly differently. So even if you've got your template and everything already set up, I had some from a couple of years ago, but I just felt like it needed reviewing. And I can see how it, has to be polished. And the marketing, I did put testimonials in, things like that that I hadn't done before. But there's definitely a time element to to it, isn't there?
It's an
Um,
investment, it's an
yeah,
investment in future business, absolutely.
I
Yeah.
know exactly. So yeah, and I have had ones that obviously haven't been accepted in the past, but it is a bit gutting, isn't it, when you've put that much time in. So I suppose it's trying to work on how to streamline it so that every job that comes in and you've got to make a fee proposal, that you get quicker at it as well without
Yeah.
missing anything out.
I'm a bit cheeky. I put in probably at least a half day somewhere in the design concept, which I know secretly is a bit of payback for that
That's
work.
a really good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I've
sort of
also
hidden in there.
for a client who doesn't have much of a clue how much their project is going to cost, because just because they haven't, never bought a house full of furniture before, I have actually negotiated with them an hourly rate based fee to produce the fee proposal. So, and it has included an estimated budget for the project. And, so I had a client paid me 2 days because it was a big project to actually come up with an estimate of, along with the fee proposal, how much I thought that they would be spending. Um, yeah. So there are,
That's
you
great.
can be pragmatic about it.
Yes. Yeah, and I suppose it depends on the scale of the work. I mean, the examples you showed were sort of whole house design, weren't they?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, if you can't get your client, we are in sales, we might as well accept, we're designers, but we are also salespeople. We're selling for
Yeah.
our business. And if you can't get your client to make time for the presentation, you could actually record a Loom video or
I
a
was just thinking that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or QuickTime, QuickTime on a Mac or whatever, and actually talk
Mm.
them through, do a
Mhm.
voiceover through the whole presentation. Makes
Yeah.
it harder for them to sort of fast forward to the point at which you reveal the
Yeah.
fee. Um,
Yeah.
but at
And
least
then
you would be sort of present there and giving a decent
mm,
delivery um,
yes.
of your material.
I
And it
think
is
as well,
important, isn't
Kate. Oh, sorry.
it? No, I was just going to say, I think a lot of clients who perhaps haven't worked with a professional interior designer before don't really know the process as well. So it is important to just say that, there are actual hours that I sit down and think about this stage and then this stage and this stage, so that they understand where the fee comes from at every point. They don't understand concepts, do they? Or
Yeah,
they might understand the hours needed for sourcing or lighting design or something like that. But
yeah. Now, I think Charlotte has just joined us. I've got a horrible feeling.
mm,
Charlotte, uh,
Yeah.
I think I might have given the wrong time to some people here. And I think, have you just joined?
Yes.
We actually went off at 1 o'clock, not at 2 o'clock. So I have recorded the whole thing
Okay.
and I'm going to give you the recording. I'm so sorry. I
That's okay.
apologize
Don't
sincerely.
worry.
It's because I'm in Spain. I think I've got my own time muddled up with everybody else's. So
Don't
sincerely
worry.
sorry.
It's cool. It's cool. Don't worry. I'll watch it.
Okay. Does anybody have Naomi? Is that a finger up?
Yeah, that's a hand up. So a couple of things. I just finished an all apartment project here in Copenhagen. And I had, from the get-go, I was designing the kitchen and the bathrooms and everything else. And then when it came, I went to the kitchen company with them after, having done the whole analysis of what they needed and really doing it bespoke because he's very tall, she's very short, and I went to two meetings with the kitchen company with them and got all the samples and matched the tiles with the kitchen materials and everything. And when it came to final invoicing, I I spoke to them because in the end they went for a very high spec kitchen, which was amazing. But then they were really not happy with doing the markup on the kitchen because it turned out that his company actually had a discounted rate. That's how it works in Denmark. So a lot of the big companies pre-arrange discounted rates with a lot of companies. So my designer's discount was less than that. So then he went with directly with the kitchen, and then I couldn't do a markup. So that was kind of, in essence, that was about 5 hours of my time that with them that I couldn't charge for, what would you do then?
I think I think I well, I think I would have put into the design fee my time spent on the kitchen. So rather than hoping to recoup that as part of a markup that I was charging on FF&E or on procurement,
Mm-mm.
I think I would have put in some design time. Um, I mean, the way I prefer to work is to have no animus at all if my client decides to go and buy themselves or buy, never to be exposed in the event
Mm.
that they do that. So to make sure that all of the time that I'm going to put into their design has been paid for as part of the design fee, and just leave pure procurement for that next phase. Um,
Yeah,
I think, I think I might, it's hard, but I might speak to the client and say, okay, I completely understand why you would do that. I understand your interests. I hoped, and it was always my expectation that I would be supplying the kitchen. And as a result, I've invested 5 hours in helping you get to this point.
mm.
And therefore, I would like to submit an invoice for the time that I've spent on the kitchen with you. Is that acceptable? Because it wasn't part of the original fee, but I hope
Yeah.
you would agree that that was fair. And if they say no, they say no, and you're just a bit stuffed.
Yeah, I mean, I think also the frustrating thing was that, I'd specified so many different elements of the kitchen that I then relayed directly to the kitchen designer. Um, so it was kind of bittersweet, even though it looks amazing, and I'm gonna put that I
Yeah,
did it with the kitchen company.
I think
Um,
I think we don't have Danielle here today, but I think kitchens are one of the most challenging things actually because getting remunerated for kitchens when they do tend to get outsourced as a lump
mm,
to another supplier. That's one of the hardest things and I haven't got to the bottom of that yet. I haven't figured that one out because there has to be a new way of
yeah.
capturing, you know, um, capturing the just the gratitude that is you deserve for the work that you
Mm,
put into that part of the design.
yeah, thank you.
Okay. Sonia, I am so sorry. I don't know what I've done to you and Charlotte, but I think I've got you coming in an hour after everybody else. And I think it's my fault because I think I told some people 2 o'clock and other people 1 o'clock, and we actually set off at 1 o'clock. So I have recorded the whole thing and I'm going
Oh,
to give you a link, and I sincerely apologize. I don't know how that snuck in this time.
okay. Yeah, because I originally thought it was 1 o'clock, and then I checked the Zoom link and it said two, and I was like, oh, okay.
Right. I'm sorry. This is this being overseas thing, and I need to get to the bottom of that. But my sincere apologies for.
So I'm not supposed to be here
Oh
then.
no, no, no. You are very welcome, but you've missed the presentation. So I'm going to put it up on YouTube immediately.
Oh, okay. Oh, and Charlotte did the same thing, did
Charlotte
she?
did the same thing. Yeah.
Okay, well that's all
So
right then.
yeah, no,
Yeah,
no, no, no.
me
It's my
too.
it's
Hands up.
it's my fault. It's my fault. Okay. Does anybody have
Don't
any
worry.
other comments or questions before we?
Yeah, hi Julia. I'm not going to put my video on as I'm sick, but I just have a question in regards to the length of the proposal, because if we consider the different points that we've just analyzed to be, included in the proposal, we are around 7 pages, and then there's a contract. Um, I was wondering, I mean, for an overall turnkey project, you might need a number of pages, but when the projects are much more smaller, let's say, I don't know, a suite, a room, or a couple of rooms, you do have to include all of these, and the amount of work that you have to do is still the same, possibly with less hours. But I'm just wondering, and I do present the proposal to the client. I never send it. So when I have to present the proposal, what will be the ultimate number of pages to present, do you
Oh
think?
gosh.
A question, I know.
Yeah,
I don't want them to feel kind of overwhelmed,
yeah, I
but
know,
it does
if
make
you've
sense to explain everything and to justify,
yeah,
especially when,
I
I
think you have to just figure you have to work that out to what feels right for you, Layla. I'm sorry, I don't think there's a I mean
it's all right.
if all you're doing is the downstairs loo and you send them a book, it looks like overkill. So but you do have, you've still got the same, you still need to induct the client, you still need to give them a covering letter, you still need to tell them how much, you still need to tell them what you're going to do. Um, so, yeah, I'm really sorry. I think it's that the problem with this is, there's doing stuff by the hourly rate, then maybe there's a like a block of hours where you don't get into this level of detail. And then there is the full design service, which is what we're talking about when we're getting into this level of detail for fee proposals. Um,
But this is a full, everything is going to be bespoke. They come out of a very bad experience with another kind of showroom slash interior designer who didn't go through the whole process and ended up not delivering in time, and the price got bigger and bigger, and they were forced to choose designs and brands that they were carried by the showroom. So that's why she knows how we work, and she approached me, and she wants me to do everything bespoke. So on top of delivering the design, I also have to follow through the um, how would you say, the manufacturer of each item, accessories, and all the rest. So it makes sense to include everything in, because I take her through a journey and explain why her experience with me, it's also reassuring her,
yeah.
is going to be different. So all of this has to be included.
Yeah.
I'm just scared that
Yeah,
it's
no, I
going to be
think if
like a book.
if you're getting into that degree of bespoke supply,
Yeah.
actually you need to have that amount of
Okay.
paperwork behind the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Okay, no problem. Get well soon, Layla.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything else? No? Okay. Well, it's goodness. It's Easter week. So have a lovely Easter. And oh, it's also race day in Hot House on Thursday, which will be going ahead, even though Friday is Good Friday. So we're going to be getting together to do our social media posts for the month. We do them independently, but we get together in the morning and then separate, go and do our stuff, and then meet up again later on. So I know a couple of you are going to be on that. But do DM me if you want to get onto the newsletter, you want to join Hot House, you want any other information about anything, then get in touch. But lovely to see you all.
Brilliant.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Thank you,
Julia.
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 Happy
Okay.
Easter, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye.
happy Easter.
Happy
Bye.
Happy
Easter.
Easter. Bye.
Bye.